All right, I believe we're ready to go. You want me to go ahead and bring them in?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Once again, good afternoon, everyone. Commissioner Ben Hassan from District 6. And Ms. Dowse, you can take it away and go ahead for introductions.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for your time this afternoon. This is the presentation of the findings from NV5, who is our energy project representative concerning our proposed performance contract that we may or may not enter into with Trane. As you know, we procured their services back in December, and they have been working alongside Augusta, our team, to include finance, the law department, as well as facilities, and with some regard to engineering, as well as Trane Incorporated, as far as reviewing all of the associated contract, as well as the exhibits associated with the performance contract. I will now be turning the floor over to Aldo Mazzaferro, who will present their findings as discussed.
Before you get started, Ms. Dowse, I'll take the lead of everybody inviting themselves, but everybody's name seems to be before them. So I think you can refer to them because everybody seems to recognize each one of the names before them. So go ahead. I'm sorry, Ms. Dowse.
Thank you. Aldo, you can proceed.
Great. Thank you for the intro. Can everyone see my screen? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. Got two screens here. So if you find me looking over here, it's not that I'm staring off into space. But anyway, thank you for having us here today. We're excited to get through the details of this project and give you an update on all the work that we've done to date to get to where we are. Very excited about the results. So thank you for having us. And really, before I dive into the details on it, I just want to take a moment to, thank the city for bringing us on board to contribute to this project. Director Dowse and her team, the finance department, the legal department, they've been extremely responsive in working with us, getting us information that we need in a timely manner to work as effectively and efficiently as possible. And, I'd also like to, take a moment to thank the Trane team too, for their work. I know firsthand that they've put in some significant long nights the last couple of weeks to get us to this point. It's been a very rapid timeline, and it's never an easy process to come in at the end of the contract like this when it's been developed, to come in and be that third party reviewer and get up to speed very quickly. So it was really a massive lift on the city's part and on Trane's part. So again, just thank you to everyone for bringing us into the fold here, and we're excited with the results of what we're going to talk about today. So I'm going to jump right into it. Here's a quick agenda. We'll give you an intro, a little bit about us, NV5, what an EPC is, or an ESPC, Energy Savings Performance Contract. We'll give you some highlights of the project. We'll talk a little bit about what our services include and how we've been engaged in this process and what to expect going forward from us. And then we'll talk a little bit about the findings and results of our efforts to date, and we'll get into next steps. So again, my name is Aldo Mazzaferro. I'm in charge of business development with NV5. I have a long background of working with cities, school districts, really, we call it the mush market, municipalities, universities, schools, hospitals. Being an owner's rep for energy performance contracts, I've been doing it for about 10 years now. I've probably been involved in close to 100 projects, hundreds of millions of dollars worth of ESPC investments. With me today is Ruth Gay. Ruth, you want to introduce yourself a little bit?
Yeah, hi, I'm Ruth Gay. I've been with NV5 for 2 years now, and I have 12 years of experience in energy projects and energy management. And I'm excited to be part of this team, supporting in a technical role and project management role. I guess that's it. That's me in a nutshell.
I don't want to forget to thank Ruth as well for all the time that she put into this. When we talk about these contracts, there are thousands of pages, thousands of lines of Excel documents and things like that. Ruth has really been the one in the trenches, putting in her own late nights as well, getting us through all this documentation to be here today and, be comfortable talking about the project. There's a couple other core team members here. Jim Pagliaro is our Executive Director of Operations, and we have a couple vice presidents here, Chris Halpin and Steve Wells, who have really been involved in the ESPC program, this industry since really its conception, when it started to get very popular in the 90s. They both worked for ESCOs formerly in their lives, and Chris Halpin actually formally started a company called Celtic Energy, which was acquired by NV5 about 3-4 years ago, where he worked for ESCOs and saw on the other side of the table that this need existed. Clients like you need an expert to come in who knows this industry, knows what's best practices and things like that, to help you negotiate this contract to really have the most fair and transparent deal, for everyone involved. So he was kind of the visionary for this service way back when, 20 plus years ago when this started working. So NV5, we're national, really NV5 global. We do projects outside of the United States. We're a publicly traded firm. We have 100 plus offices across the country and the world, really. Our headquarters is in Hollywood, Florida. Last I checked, we have close to 5,000 employees, but that changes pretty rapidly. We do have a couple offices in Georgia, I believe in Roswell and Columbus, where we provide some infrastructure services and environmental compliance type work. But NV5 really has 5 main business lines, where there's building infrastructure, there's testing and compliance, environmental compliance, geospatial, all these types of engineering consulting services that require unique, specific expertise to come in. And my group specifically is under the Building Technologies Group, and we call ourselves internally the EES Group, or Energy Efficiency Services. Like I said, our team really has 20 plus years experience helping these public agencies like you go through this project procurement, development, implementation all over the place. Our main business line is EPC Owners Rep Services. And the best way I like to describe our services is think of us as a member of the city staff. You brought us in to be your independent, neutral, third-party expert firm who knows this stuff inside and out. And we're here to be an advocate for you, to evaluate things for you. And, when you have questions about this project, come to us with it. We're here to help you get the best value and minimize your risks throughout the whole term of this, big energy initiative. So we have a ton of different qualifications. I did send a few over to you, and this is really specific to energy savings performance contracts, ESPCs. And really the biggest takeaway I want you to have here is that we are a major part of this industry. We're a leader in this industry. We've done over $2.5 billion worth of energy upgrades in these projects, 150 plus EPC projects. Our team has certified energy, mechanical, electrical engineers on it. We are certified through the Association of Energy Engineers. Ruth and I are both certified energy managers. We have measurement and verification professionals. Our firm is the firm with the most project facilitators on staff. And project facilitator is a specific certification from the Department of Energy, which is required in order to provide these types of owners reps to the federal government. So we also work on projects, Army bases all over the country. That's really, we take the model best practices from that model and bring it down to the mush market to, again, get the best value for you. We're constantly reviewing annual M&V reports, and I'll get into a little bit what that means. And, we were a contributing author in developing the contract language itself for a lot of these states listed here, developing best practices, rules, regulations, things like that. These are a few of our major clients. GSA is the General Services Administration. Under this contract, we're able to work for the federal government, specifically the Defense Logistics Agency, Air Force bases, and things like that. We do these projects that are upwards of $100 million plus in investments, all the way down to local governments, villages, school districts that might be only $3, $4, $5 million investments. So, like I said, the Air Force is a main client. Some of our cities, we work with the city of Boston, city of Phoenix, Maine University, On the school district front, we work with Clark County School District, which is, I believe, the 4th or 5th largest school district in the country, something like that, with 400 plus schools. So I always say that we have projects literally ongoing from Hawaii to Maine currently right now, from the federal government all the way down to local government. So we're really a one size fits all to help you get through, your specific initiative. ESCO familiarity is something we take very seriously. These are some of the major ESCOs that work in this industry throughout the nation, really across the globe. You'll see trains listed here, but having this familiarity and experience working with them we do enjoy very much a mutually respectful working relationship, because we do recognize these are great companies that do great projects and really help cities like you make significant impacts on their utility bills, get savings, get great projects done. And by having this familiarity with them, we're able to come in and be brought up to speed very quickly, because we have worked with Train before. We have active projects going on with Train, I believe, up in University of Maine and also at the city of Phoenix. So we're familiar with their contract documents, some of their corporate policies, things like that. So again, having this familiarity with the ESCOs allow us to, bring the best practices across the industry to your project. So enough about NV5. I'm going to briefly get into what an EPC is, Energy Savings Performance Contract. And really, if you look at the language or definitions of these types of programs, the word partnership is always used, because it's a partnership between a government agency and what's called an ESCO, or an energy services contractor or company. And throughout the country, in each state, there's specific laws and regulations developed depending on the state. That's no different here in Georgia for you guys, where this was established in 2010 by Georgia law known as the Guaranteed Energy Savings Performance Contracting Act, which lays out a lot of the legislation and rules and requirements for these projects. So it's a very regulated process, and we're here to help you interpret that law and make sure the contract complies with that. And like I said, every state has its own legislation like this, and we've actually contributed to a lot of it, along the Eastern Seaboard. So in an EPC, the thing that really sets it apart the most is that this is a turnkey project, and that's critical, because the turnkey project is the lead contractor, or ESCO, or Train in this case. And that turnkey contractor is responsible for developing the scope, developing the cost, and also guaranteeing the performance of what they install. They're responsible, so all of the onus is on them to manage their subcontractors and vendors and the equipment that gets installed to make sure that this project performs over time. They're footing the risk, they're the leader, they're the turnkey provider of this. And the way that these jobs are structured is that the guaranteed savings, or the revenue in the job, fund all of the costs associated with the job. It's fully self-funding. And the way that I like to use this very simplified chart to just demonstrate what that actually means, right? So this is a typical city or any sort of government agency with an existing energy and operations budget. This is before the contract. The ESCO develops the project, estimates the savings, installs the equipment, and generates that baseline, or that new energy and operations budget down. For simplicity, this isn't necessarily to scale or anything. It's really just to demonstrate the structure. And in that new excess savings, you're now using those budget surplus monies to pay the debt costs, to pay the project costs going forward. And then after the contract ends, you have your new energy and operations budget and the excess savings to enjoy fully. It's again, it's very simplified in that chart, but I think it's a good model for the self-funding concept. So I'm going to jump into some of the highlights of your project, more exciting part of the presentation, I'm sure. Financially, we're estimating that this is approximately $25 million. I say approximately because, there's our final tweaks going on right now in anticipation of next week, but I believe the final number is right around $24.77 million. That investment is going to generate roughly about $1.5 million per year in guaranteed annual savings. So that's both on the energy front and on the operation and maintenance front, in that you're replacing old aging equipment and you're not going to have to pay for that in the future. So this is another funding source on the project. Think of replacing lamps, where in your own home, if you have old aging lamps, you're probably constantly going out there replacing light bulbs and whatnot as they age. Through this project, you're putting in new LED lighting that lasts longer. So the city won't be going out and spending X $1,000s per year buying new lamps and things like that to keep these systems running. Overall, this is about a 45% reduction in the city's utility costs going forward. And again, like I stated before, the guaranteed annual savings are covering all the future project costs associated with it. So the debt payments and future ongoing service contracts, and I'll get more into that later, are all funded by the guaranteed savings of the project. Some of the scope highlights. Like I said, LED lighting, this is a comprehensive upgrade across all the facilities. Roughly, most of your facilities do have fluorescent lamps in them. By retrofitting to an LED fixture, that's top of the line equipment, really the standard of today's cutting edge technology. And, by doing that, you're literally cutting your electric load in half for the lighting. So it's a huge, huge upgrade, very significant. There's also benefits with the color rendering and things like that, and they run forever. They have very, very long operating hours compared to the typical fluorescent bulb. Temperature control upgrades. This is another major comprehensive upgrade, and I've found doesn't always get the attention it deserves in these types of projects, because it's not, a flashy chiller replacement or a solar panels being installed, but it's a critical piece of infrastructure in these large buildings. And it's really, this project's going to bring them up to the 21st century with improved connectivity, better remote monitoring, and it's all being installed by Trane, and the onus is on Trane to install it properly so that these buildings aren't being overheated anymore, or overcooled, or worse, being heated or cooled when the buildings are unoccupied at night. So by doing this upgrade, you're taking all of this new 21st century equipment, dialing in the controls, and really tightening up the operation of the buildings to make sure that they're operating as efficiently as possible. So there's energy savings, but comfort controls and things like that, it makes a very, very big difference. Like I said, these projects always focus on major HVAC infrastructure, right? So in this project, I believe 2, maybe 4 chillers are being replaced across a few buildings. HVAC, that's just a common, overarching term for all the DX units and split units being installed throughout the buildings. All this is aging equipment that is being funded by the project. So you don't necessarily go out and replace equipment like this to generate savings. You're really doing it to improve. You need to heat, you need to cool the building, you need to provide ventilation into the building. This equipment is being funded by measures like the LED lighting and controls upgrades. So it's really one comprehensive project where you're going to have new lighting, very modern temperature controls that are going to be controlling new equipment as well going forward. One thing not listed here is there's extensive water scope being installed also at the detention center. The slide gets a little busy if you really list all that here, but that's another major component of the potential savings for this job. And then, energy efficiency, people say, is one of the greenest strategies, right? Because you're just not using that kilowatt hour or that therm of natural gas anymore. We're also complementing that in this project through solar generation or solar panels to be installed. So there's 2 main locations. It's usually reserved for larger buildings where there's space to install it. So at the county municipal building, a solar parking lot canopy will be installed. And at the Diamond Lakes Library, a ground mounted system is going to be installed. So again, this is a very comprehensive project, great 21st century equipment being installed. And with that comes the importance of full in-house training. I bulleted and bolded and underlined these 2 components because it's a major, major benefit for you guys to. What we don't want to happen is install all this new high-tech equipment and everyone wash their hands and walk away, because 5-10 years from now, you could be in a bad place if that equipment isn't maintained properly. So training is a major component of the project, and the budget of the project also includes ongoing costs for maintenance services on the building automation system, like the controls, or on the major pieces of HVAC equipment like chillers and DX units going forward. So I'll talk a little bit more about that as we get through the presentation, but that shouldn't be ignored because it's really a major component to make sure that the system continues to perform over time and that the equipment lasts for 20, 25, 30 years going forward. So I'm going to jump quickly into an overview of what NV5 is doing for you. It's really broken down into three main phases. There's the performance contract evaluation. We did the technical financial evaluation of the proposed contract. We also worked with the city's legal team, negotiating the contract, bringing transparency to the contract, really making sure that the details are there so there is no confusion going forward. And, it's really tightened up and, there is no finger pointing at the end. We're here to make sure this contract's, detailed and transparent so that everyone is on the same page going forward. Really, we call this kind of the three legs of the stool for ESPCs. There's the technical leg, the financial leg, and the legal leg. They all kind of depend on each other in order for this to be a good contract. So that's really how we develop our evaluation process to make sure those are all in lockstep with each other to move this forward. Our phase 2 services is overseeing the implementation or the construction. We'll be in that service, we'll be attending construction meetings, we'll be reviewing design drawings, equipment selections, submittals. We'll be inspecting work as it's installed to make sure it complies with the contract or the design or different code requirements. We'll be reporting to the city on construction progress. Sorry about that. And really at the end of construction, which can really be, end up being a sticky process and somewhat delayed, what we do is play an active role in the closeout, where we're helping the city to develop what we call punch list. Just like any construction project, if you're renovating your kitchen at home, you might have a list of tweaks, final screws to be nailed in and things like that to really button this up and dot the I's, cross the T's sort of thing. And, we play a close role in that to systematically go through that punch list and get you to the final completion during closeout. And finally, phase 3 is after construction, where it moves into the performance period, and we're reviewing measurement and verification. Measurement and verification is the process where an ESCO is coming back to the city, Train in this case, and they're proving to the city that saying, hey, we installed all this equipment, we did our measurements, and we're verifying now that the project is performing and generating the savings that we guaranteed. Those are highly technical reports, and some of those activities should be witnessed and overseen. So we play a role in that phase as well, to be there, kind of like your eyes and ears. Again, we'll be reviewing those reports. We'll be issuing annual executive summary reports of our findings on those reports. And really right now we're contracted for years 1 through 3 of the performance period. And we gave the city the option to extend that for years 4, 5, 6, however long, you may want us to be involved, acting as that member of your staff to oversee the project. Okay, and finally, I'm just going to give you guys a little overview of the results of some of our review here. So main components here, right? We look at the savings side first. And what that includes is reviewing the baseline, right? What you're spending today, what the existing conditions are. We look at the utility rates saying, okay, if you're going to save 1 million kilowatt hours, what does that mean in terms of dollars for the city? What is that dollar per kilowatt hour rate? We're reviewing assumptions for the existing conditions, right? So how long are the buildings operating? How long does this piece of equipment last? What's the equipment's performance specs? Is it operating at an 80% efficiency or a 65% efficiency or things of that nature, where basically getting into the weeds on all of these calculations to confirm that the savings that are being calculated are done accurately. And some of the results of that process, we did identify that there were some inconsistencies originally in the presentation of the materials to O&M and savings calcs, so we did clear that up. There was some issue with the thermal savings, about $5,000 per year, which Again, was a result of the utility rates being a little bit unclear of what's being calculated. So that's been tightened up. And then a little bit more on the utility rates here. These projects best practices really call for these projects to be modeled in a way where the baseline of energy units being saved is what's being guaranteed, right? How many units of energy, how many gallons of oil, therms of natural gas, kilowatt hours of electricity are projected to be saved per year. And the way that we structured this, you need to make that jump to dollars eventually. Train originally proposed to use a fixed 3% assumption going forward. And we agreed with that. That's a very standard, fairly conservative, actually, in today's day and age, in the inflation period. And we fixed that 3% going forward. So it's always going to be based on 3%, which will allow the city to always get back to how many units of energy did we save and where would we be had we never done this project? Because the market conditions, nobody knows what the cost of natural gas is going to be 5 years from now, 10 years from now, or 15 years from now. Same goes for electricity. And some years it may go up, some years it may go down slightly, but the idea here is to just fix this as an assumption that all parties can agree to going forward to model this long-term performance contract. On the flip side of the savings, we're looking at the project costs. And, as I go through this process, I just want to, point out again that, I want to thank Train for working with us on this. They had no obligation to do so, but they did disclose very transparently for us all the project costs, how they got up to their total $25 million number, showing the subcontractor costs, their overhead assumptions, their profits, their project management fees, all of these things that typically you're faced with a $25 million number. Train recognizes that we know what we're doing here, and they were willing to disclose all this for our review. And, we really found it to be within reasonable bounds. And, in fact, I was just discussing with another team member that, compared to another project we're working on, this was a very cost-effective deal for the city and really good value. So, thank you again to Train for disclosing that and, making us all comfortable with it. So in these projects, there's typically what we call a customer controlled contingency fund. This was contemplated in the project, but really what we did in the contract terms is make sure that there's a best practice or, a formal, rigorous approval process for the use of those funds. We don't want them to just be decided to be used randomly one day. So what this means is through the construction period, typically items come up that are kind of like wish list items, things that weren't in the scope that really maybe should have been. And we kind of keep a running list with the ESCO, with us and with the city of potential wish list items. And as we get through construction, Train will develop proposals for the city to consider spending some of that customer control contingency fund on these needs to make sure that while they're on site, they can efficiently, get that work done. So biggest thing, if the city doesn't need these funds, it all gets returned back to the city for their benefit to use on X, Y, and Z going forward. And then finally, major cost component of the project, in addition to the $25 million, is the performance period services. That was just over $300,000 per year. And what that included was 4 main service lines. There was the measurement verification, which I talked a little bit about. That's where Train is legally obligated to come back and prove to the city that what they installed is working through measurement verification. There's TIS, or Train Intelligence Services, which is kind of like think of it as remote monitoring, keeping an eye on your buildings and making sure that set points aren't overridden and that the thermostats are all operating and the equipment's operating as designed. There's building automation support, which is trained technicians coming in and troubleshooting for issues, replacing some, secondary equipment like sensors or things like that as they fail. And then there's HVAC maintenance, which kind of designed to be a preventative maintenance contract where you're replacing filters. And, I kind of equate it to owning a car, right? You go out and get your oil change and tire rotation done on a regular basis. This type of service contract can be built in there to help you guys maintain some of this more expensive pieces of equipment like the HVAC units, chillers, things like that, that you're investing a lot of money in, and you want to make sure that the best maintenance activities are being done to it properly and on schedule, or those pieces of equipment could in future years end up having a shorter useful life or something like that, which nobody wants here, right? So the original contract proposed all of these as one service, roughly just over $300,000 per year, totaling about $7 million over the full term of the project. So what we did and what we recommended, and I appreciate Trane working with us on this, is that they basically broke this down into 3 separate and distinct service contracts. So the first one is the M&V with TIS. That's going to be about $100,000 per year. So this is required by law. And again, this is the process where Trane is coming back, performing all of their measurements and proving that the project is working. Highly recommended. I've had customers in the past refer to it as their annual doctor checkup, to come into their buildings and say, hey, this is all working. You could probably fix this, X, Y, and Z, things like that, to just make sure the project is performing the way it was intended to. The other 2 main service lines, the BAS and the HVAC, Trane's going to, as the project details are further developed during implementation. So what I mean by that is the full design, the equipment selection. Trane's going to go out and develop the detailed activities for each of these service contracts and present them to the city and NV5 for our consideration, our review, evaluation, to really make sure that the value is there for the city. And each year, the city may be able to negotiate that, remove some scope, put new scope in, depending on what level of activities is recommended at that juncture or that time. But really, the benefit here is that there's no longer just one originally proposed $300,000 service contract. If the city wants to cancel building automation services, they can do that without impacting measurement and verification. Same goes for HVAC maintenance, and it really just gives the city more flexibility going forward to make sure that this money is generating the most value for them going forward. And like I said, we're going to be there reviewing all of these service contracts, assisting the city every step of the way. Wrapping up here, there were some changes to the measurement verification approach. This is all guided by what's called the International Performance and Measurement Verification Protocols, I believe. IPMVP is the acronym. As you can see, there's tons of acronyms in this industry. And some of the tweaks we put in here and recommended to Trane, and again, thank you to them for, making those adjustments. We asked for some more robust sampling plans on things like the solar, where they're coming in improving a little more often, that system's working properly. We required each guarantee period to stand alone. So what this means is the way the contract was originally proposed, say you had an excess savings each year. In year 1, you generated $10,000 in excess savings. In year 2, it turns out that you actually missed the mark and you had a shortfall of $10,000. The way the contract was originally written, Trane would have been able to apply those excess savings to year 2 and say, oh, you're even, right, to date. Georgia law, and Trane admitted this was somewhat of an oversight, in that Georgia law specifically disallows this. So we made sure the contract clearly states how this is handled. So each year is going to stand alone. The excess savings in a given year are going to accrue to the city's benefit and nowhere else. The procedures in the event of a shortfall, this was fairly clearly lined up. We just wanted to kind of really get in there and clean up the contract language to make it clear that when a shortfall occurs, the first thing that happens is Trane will quantify what that shortfall is, we'll review it, and then Trane will submit a proposal to the city to either cut a check for that shortfall amount or provide services in that shortfall amount. And the city can decide how they would like to do that. I've had customers say, I'll take the check, and other ones say, hey, I'd love to get X, Y, and Z work done. I had a city in the past that had a shortfall, and they got about 100 streetlights replaced because of the shortfall with no out-of-pocket cost to them. We've removed some language allowing Train to seek reimbursement if there's previous shortfalls and excess savings in future guaranteed periods. And one of the big ones, and this often kind of gets forgotten, is construction period savings. As this construction period moves along, the city's going to be generating and enjoying savings that come in from this process. The second that you replace a lamp, that lamp is now operating at half the wattage and is generating savings. So we worked with Train and they cleared up some of the contract language to really establish what that procedure is going to be for calculating those savings going forward, because the city will be using those savings to make payments in the future. But we wanted to really make sure that was very clearly stated in the contract. So wrapping up here, NV5 is actively working. We were on calls this morning. We'll be on calls tonight to finalize our review of the proposal and the contract. And afterwards, we'll be issuing a formal recommendation letter to the commission. This will be done in anticipation of next week's vote on the financing and on the performance contract. If you choose to move forward with the contract, implementation will begin in March. Implementation usually takes some time to kind of ramp up, especially for a project of this size. So there's usually some detailed design being done, equipment selection, equipment ordering, things of that nature to kind of mobilize construction and get ready to really build this out. Construction right now is estimated to be about 18 months. It's fairly standard for a project of this size. So completion will be in the fall of 2023, most likely, which is perfect timing to commission some of the control systems when, you know, in the fall, one day you could require cooling and 2 days later you could be required heating in there. So it's a really good alignment of timing here. And then after completion in the fall of 2023, you move into the performance period. So 1 year afterwards, say around the fall of 2024, you'll be receiving your first M&V report, which NV5 will be reviewing on your behalf, presenting its findings, and you'll know if the project's working. And then that process continues in year 2 and year 3 and year 4, et cetera, throughout the term of the contract. So with that, I hope wasn't too long-winded there. I want to keep it moving, but be as informative as possible. But again, thank you everyone for all your hard work on this, including Director Dowse, the Train team, Ruth. We're excited to be here, and we'd be happy to answer any questions the commission may have. So thank you.
Can you take your the question down so I can see the participants in it, please?
Yes. How's that? Good?
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yep.
Ms. Dowse, you want to say before we start opening for questions?
I don't, and I appreciate Aldo and the entire NV5 team as well. Well, I said I don't, and then I started talking. So yes, I do have something I would like to say. I appreciate Aldo and the entire NV5 team, along with Train, and walking through Augusta's team on this project, answering all of our questions. So thank you for the presentation.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. I do have some questions myself, but I want to see if anybody else have any questions before I get started. Attorney Brown, would you like to say anything? You're muted.
No, sir. I don't have a question right now.
All right, Mr. Administrator, anything you'd like to say before you open for questions?
No questions, but I guess just for comments, I would just say that, I definitely want to thank the commission for allowing staff to work with NV5 to kind of take on this massive endeavor. I think without their work, as you can see, there are some areas within the contract that, could have been problematic, but them in partnership with Train has us in a very good space to take full advantage of this with no true cost or additional cost to the city. So that is vital and important. So I'm thankful for the commission for putting that in place.
Thank you, sir. So I guess I'll go ahead and try to get it started with some questions. And I'm hoping I can remember exactly Mr. Aldo?
Aldo, yes.
Aldo,
right.
okay. Aldo, okay.
First name is fine.
Yes, and I just took in And I'm being Hassan once again. I took and just highlighted and hoping I can remember my subject matter. I'm going back to pretty much to the earliest part when I started doing this. And one of the questions I have, you said full training of in-house staff. Who would it be trained by? Is that any cost to the city?
That's included in the cost of the project. Trains team will be providing the training to the in-house staff. And usually that's done over a few days towards the end of construction. Usually we recommend that it's videotaped. All these training manuals, things like that are all copied, and it's a formal set so that when there is staff turnover in the future, new staff members can come in and take that training and really reference back and be brought up to speed to make sure they're operating the equipment.
Okay. Also on that very same slide, you have budget includes potential cost of ongoing maintenance service. So do you think are you saying there that based on the savings that we will have to receive on an annual basis, that we can create a budget from those savings to be able to pay for ongoing maintenance?
Yes, that's the way it's currently contemplated right now. So there's about 300,000 in annual service contracts budgeted in that line, 100 of which we're recommending you commit to today for measurement verification. It's required by law. And the balance is going to be negotiated over the coming months as the details are able to be provided and we can verify it's really the best value for the city. But I would highly recommend the city enter into that for this type of project to maintain this equipment properly going forward and, make sure that your investment produces the savings as expected, because I have seen horror stories over the years where equipment was installed and it was never maintained, right? And 5-10 years from then, the equipment is in disrepair. It's not a good scene for anyone, right? So definitely, I was happy to see that was in there. It just needs a little more work on the details of what's included.
Attorney Brown?
Yes, I may be jumping ahead, but and I'm asking this question, I'm not trying to make a point because I don't know the answer to the question, is the reason I'm asking it. But overall, will not Augusta be using its annual savings to repay for the financing of this project?
It will be, yes.
Okay.
That's it, Attorney Brown?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. My next question, on one of the slides you had assist this, well, I think you've already done that. Okay, that's where you assist the city's legal team in negotiating the contract terms and conditions. That's what you've currently done that, and you continue to do it at this point, right?
Yeah, we're continuing to do it. I'd say we're 90% complete.
Okay. We'll go back to one of the other slides when you're talking about the $7.2 million over the term. And I think that was about almost 18 years, but at $307,000 starting with that, it was about 3% a year. It was 7.2. And you said to go to the $100,000 on an annual basis. Should that still be 18 years?
Usually, so the way the $100,000 part works is you should have the opportunity to do that for the full 18 years is considered best practice, so that you can see how the project performs over a year. And if you want to continue paying that annual cost, you can, as the doctor's checkup, I think I referred to it as. Most of my customers over the years have canceled it after year 4, year 5, year 6, when they're confident that the project is working and performing on an annual basis. But, there's pros and cons to every decision like that. You do have the cost savings, but then by canceling it, you're forfeiting the guarantee as well, right? Because now Train isn't measuring and verifying or anything like that. So there's no way for them to still guarantee the savings. So it's a multifaceted decision-making process, I'd say. And a lot of times it comes down to how the project's performing. I've had projects where it's performing 15% excess savings year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, right? It's very successful. In those cases, the customer might choose to not continue M&V. But I've also seen the flip side where it's 15% year 1 excess savings, year 2 is only 10%, year 3 is only 5%. It might make sense to pay for it year 4, right? To see what that result is, if it's trending in a certain direction or things like that. So we work with customers on that decision for sure.
So what role does your I'm trying to think of what it does show you. When you install something, you have a contract or something, a guarantee for a couple of years that this piece of equipment is going to work or what have you.
Like a warranty?
Like warranty. I'm sorry. Yes, warranty.
Yep. So in this project, there's a year 1 workmanship warranty, meaning after final completion, at least for a year, Trane is on call. Trane's the warranty holder for workmanship, any issues associated with the equipment. After that year 1, that's when it goes into more of a traditional warranty process where it's a manufacturer warranty for the lamps, say for 5 years. If there's early burnouts, which there will be, you can get those free materials in there to replace it, and the warranty, holder will foot the bill for that.
Okay, so let me ask you that. I know it's kind of petty in terms of the amount of money we're talking about. So what you just said, does it make sense to have for that very first year after the project is complete, knowing that you have the warranty to cover that year, to consider this $100,000 because you, by all accounts, you probably covered?
Yes, I would 100% recommend. The measurement verification is separate from a warranty.
Okay.
Measurement verification is them watching the system and testing the system, right, to prove that it's performing, versus a workmanship warranty is more on, hey, this boiler keeps firing short, or this valve doesn't seem to operate properly, or something like that, right, where it's potentially an installation issue or a material issue.
Okay. If you mentioned about guarantees here in terms of savings and not meeting savings, and sometimes you find a deficit, what are some of the benefits? I know you say, well, sometimes I'll let you allow. What if it doesn't meet the threshold? How is that evaluated? Not evaluated, but what do we get? Do we get anything back? Are we owed Trane anything back? How does that work?
So if there's a shortfall, right? They're usually not. It's not like you miss 100% on the savings, right? You might miss 5 or 10% is like the size of the shortfall, right? So let's say it's $50,000 shortfall. Trane will come in and say to the city, hey, we have a shortfall. We think it's this much. NV5 will evaluate that claim to make sure it's accurate. And then Trane will offer you a proposal of saying, hey, do you want a $50,000 check to make you whole? Or we can give you a check for $30,000 and do $20,000 worth of services for you. I think I used the example about the street lighting. This was a time where street lights were being retrofitted to LEDs, and the city had a shortfall, and Johnson, maybe it wasn't them, one of the ESCOs, whoever it was, came out and said, hey, we can replace the street lights for this value if you'd like. And we evaluated it and said, hey, city, that's a pretty good deal. You'll get all those street lights done for no out-of-pocket costs. Maybe you should consider doing that.
Okay.
So we talk through those types of things, with you.
So what about also right now, if we look at the contract as it stands in terms of the type of equipment they will implement, but as they get inside sometime and look at it, okay, I need a bigger piece of equipment, a more powerful piece of equipment. How does that impact us at the end of the day when they've already made the decision about, under normal circumstances, this is the material, this is the equipment you're going to need? Does we go back to the negotiating, or do they have to come back and inform us, or they could just install it at their own pleasure? They
would be informing us through the equipment selection, right? If they go through the detailed design and find the chiller is undersized for the cooling load in that specific building, we're going to be reviewing that claim and making sure it's accurate. But they wouldn't be able to come back to you and say, hey, we need to get a bigger chiller, and therefore we need another $20,000. They had their opportunity to do that evaluation in this investment grade audit period. So you're protected there. Okay, all right. And so you remove language allowing Trane to seek reimbursement for previous excess savings are generated in subsequent guarantee period. So I think you've taken care of that. That was one of the things we had. Yep. Thank you. Well, thank you. And my final question, I believe, here is, and you said on the 28th, which would be, I think it's next Monday, if I'm not mistaken. You said, will we get a formal recommendation letter, or are you waiting after we have a meeting
decide to do that. I think you did address it.
No, we'll have it to you in advance of that meeting. If you're being asked to vote on that meeting, we'll have a recommendation letter with our findings and our, opinion of whether you should move forward or not.
Yeah, we won't vote at that meeting because I think that's a Monday. It's not a formal meeting for us. We probably
Okay.
vote one way or the other, probably the next day, if I'm not mistaken. I can't say it's an absolute, but it won't be at that particular meeting. But
Understood. Okay.
Chairman?
yes, sir.
I think you will be voting at that meeting. I think you called it as a special call meeting so that you can vote on it because that's the deadline for holding pricing. So the goal of today is for our partners at NV5 to let us know kind of where we are right now. I think they've shared their initial findings and it looks like they feel as if we're moving in the right direction, but they will provide us formal recommendations in writing, either confirming that feeling that they have today or directing us in a different direction in advance of the 28th. And then based on their findings, you can, let's say it remains the same, you can in confidence vote to the affirmative on the 28th.
Okay. Attorney Brown, that's how, Ms. Brown, I remember that too, because I didn't remember. Thank you for that reminder, Mr. Administrator. Let me see. And you said we'll get that letter in advance?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions in the meantime? In the statement? Yes, Attorney Brown.
Yes. Although, can the commission expect a letter at least by Friday?
Yes, that's the goal. Absolutely.
Okay. Ms. Dowse, need you probably to send us out all again what's some of the facilities. And the reason I'm asking that for NV5 to understand my request here is because there's also a conversation going on about potential taking some of the facilities, potential selling them off or taking them offline. And want to try to make a comparison to this list and see the potential. Is there any relationship with that list and see if there's a possibility it's going to impact the contract itself? So that's what that's about. I'm asking Ms. Dowd to send that out to the commission so we'll know what facilities is in this contract. It's, try to get other things from Maurice McDowell about all our facilities to know exactly what's in the contract, what facilities are there.
Sure, I can send that out today after the call.
Okay, Mr. Tim, you got anything you want to say?
Nope, it's been a pleasure working with NV5 and all of our team. I think we're moving ahead at good speed.
Commissioner Scott, you have comments, anything you want to say?
No, my question was on the full training of the in-house staff.
Yep.
And to Ms. Doss, we already have those staff already in place?
Yes, ma'am. Each of our facilities, our big box facilities, that is, not all of the facilities outlined throughout the packed listing, but our big box facilities have designated maintenance personnel. And then we would get with all of the isolated facilities or the standalone facilities for them to designate who they would like to receive training also. Some of that training could easily include changing filters or monitoring the on-site systems. But yes, we do have the staff in place.
One question, another question, Ms. Doss. How often would Train come out to visit the facilities that that's under contract with them? Is that just like we have, I think Train come once a quarter here at my house. So it'll be something similar to that, Aldo or Ms. Doss?
Usually, yeah, those are the types of details that I was talking about. We're going to be presented and negotiated in the coming months as that ongoing service contract to make sure we really understand. And the city has good expectations exactly who's going to be where and when and how often and what they're going to do when they're on site, right? Those kind of 5 W's of the service contract to really make sure that the value, the annual cost of it is aligned with the activities that are under the contract. And also to make sure that if Train isn't doing something, the city should be doing something, right? To kind of make sure all the boxes are checked in terms of maintaining this equipment going forward.
Ms. Ruth, would you like to say something?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just add a little bit to what Aldo's saying, just kind of to summarize some of the, he's only really touched on how huge of a task this has been. And, I've been working with the city of Boston to do the same thing. And what we've been trying to do in the last 3 weeks, basically for the city of Boston, they have a little more time flexibility because they've been working with their contractor for years now. And NV5 is 3 years into working with the city of Boston now. And basically what we've done in the last 3 weeks would take several months in the process and the timeline that the city of Boston is doing, because we were involved early on and able to just be part of those decisions, part of those processes, part of defining the scope, and that sort of thing. So that's, we can really provide a lot of value to you. We've provided a lot of value, just even digging through the contract, digging through the calculations, just bringing transparency to the process. I would say transparency is a really important thing for you guys, because you need to know what you're getting into, what the benefit is of what you're getting into. And you need to have it actually defined, in writing, because what happens if you don't have these things defined in writing is it increases risk down the road. And that's really our goal for you, is decrease risk, so that when you get down the road to what are we installing? Did they install what they said they were installing? And ultimately, are they performing in the way that they said they would perform? Are you going to get the savings that they said you would get? And our process of reviewing and bringing everything, putting everything under a fine-tooth comb is really, really vital in ensuring that you get the performance that you want, and that you're protected when it comes to either the contractor not performing in a way that you expected, or just to be able to look at the contract and say, well, this is what the contract said, either they're following it or they're not following it. And we've done a good job, I think, of going through and calling out wherever it is that Train may not have done a good job of protecting the city, and basically insisting that they update the language, update the scope, provide more detail on the pricing, et cetera, so that you can have a lot more confidence in that what they're putting together is something that is industry standard. It's following, all the procedures it should be following. They've done their due diligence, and that they will be able to stand by it and provide you the value that they're saying that they can provide you. And I'll just touch again, I just wanted to emphasize too the service contracts, and Aldo's talked a little bit about them, but I'm going to recap just one more time. So the M&V service contract, it's called Exhibit G, was originally written all as one contract. And what we identified was that, as written, it would have required you to keep all three contracts in order to maintain those guaranteed savings. And that's important because the reason for M&V is so that you can have the contractor prove to you that they have performed the best that they can to ensure that you receive the savings that you need to pay for the project. And we wanted to, we called attention to this Exhibit G because basically there was a big gap there in terms of, first of all, scope that was shown on that exhibit, because it wasn't really written as a detailed service contract is what you expect. And I felt like the city had some ideas about what they wanted that service contract to entail, but I didn't see them necessarily spelled out in there. So one of the things that we talked a lot about with Train was, what does this represent and what are they actually getting? And what it came down to was Train says, well, actually, there's a lot of details that we can't define right now. And we said, okay, well, we don't want the HVAC contract and the BAS contract and the TIS contract to muddy the waters with the M&V contract, because the M&V contract is really the one that matters when it comes to your guaranteed savings.
Right.
So basically just wanted to call attention to that. It is a really big, what was it, like a $7.2 million over the life of the contract. And we wanted you to feel more comfortable that that number is not set in stone. So because of what we've pushed Train to reword and to clarify for us, they've clarified that that is an annual cost. It's renewed annually. You can fully negotiate that. You can negotiate what you get out of it. You can renegotiate the wording if you want. And that isn't something that you have to commit to like today in signing the full contract. We'll basically be helping you to negotiate it. And yeah, so sorry, Aldo.
No, that's
You
an
just,
important part of the contract for sure.
you had something you wanted to say.
Well, thank you. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Aldo.
No, I'm all set. Thank you.
Yeah. Just want to know, just asking, just for us as a city moving forward, if we embark on anything close to what we're talking about here, were we kind of behind the 8 ball to go into the contract early on before having a consultant or NV5 like yourself to come in and say, hey, get a consultant first and see exactly what your needs are, because we had you all behind the 8 ball? Am I thinking about this wrong?
I'm extremely biased in this, in answering this question, I'll say, in that I feel every SPC project should be done, with an owner's rep on your side of the table who knows the exhibits, knows the methodologies and all that stuff. And, I can't speak to the process to get us involved to date, but, where you're at today, I think we're very confident, that this is a good deal for the city now. But
I'll leave that alone, man.
yeah.
Okay. Well, we appreciate.
I'll try to be unbiased in it. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Right.
Anybody else have anything to say before we close this out? We thank you all very much for your professionalism. Glad to have you on board. Look forward to your recommendations. I look, like you said, the second part is BAS and TIS, HVAC maintenance service. As you see, that's a separate contract. We can negotiate that one way or the other with you all support. We're excited about that. And we thank you very much. Ms. Dowse, you can close us out if you need be.
Thank you.
I'm done, Commissioner. Thank you.
Thank everyone. Thank you for your time.
Okay. Have a great day. Thanks again.